130 people confessed. Not one of them did it. In this episode of Cold Case Files, we examine the Olof Palme assassination, a Swedish prime minister murder that became the longest and most expensive criminal investigation in Scandinavian history. Last episode, we explored how an entire Missouri town watched a man get shot and said nothing. Tonight, we go to Stockholm, where an entire nation watched a case unravel for over 3 decades. This famous unsolved murder, this Stockholm shooting of 1986, became an unsolved political assassination that haunted Sweden's national identity. And here is what makes this case unlike any other. The killer walked away into the snow, and despite 10,000 witness interviews, the trail went cold on the busiest street in Sweden's capital. Sven Olof Joachim Palme was born on January 30th, 1927, into a wealthy Stockholm family with aristocratic roots. He studied law at Stockholm University and spent a formative year as a student at Kenyon College in Ohio, where he hitchhiked across the American South and witnessed racial segregation firsthand. That experience shaped his politics for life. He joined the Swedish Social Democratic Party, rose through the ranks with extraordinary speed, and became prime minister in 1969 at the age of 42. Palme was fiercely outspoken on the international stage. He condemned the American bombing of Hanoi in 1972, comparing it to historical atrocities. He criticized apartheid in South Africa, supported Palestinian self-determination, and condemned the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. He was loved by many, hated by some, and impossible to ignore. But what made Palme extraordinary in a different way was how he lived. Despite being the leader of a nation, he often walked to work. He took public transport. He and his wife Lisbeth went to the cinema, ate at restaurants, and strolled home through the city without bodyguards. On the evening of February 28, 1986, this openness cost him his life. That Friday night, Palme and his wife Lisbeth made a last-minute decision to see a film at the Grand Cinema on Sveavägen, one of Stockholm's main thoroughfares. They had dismissed their security detail for the evening. Their son Morten and his girlfriend joined them for the screening. At approximately 11:15 p.m., the film ended. Palme and Lisbeth said goodnight to their son and began walking south along Sveavägen toward the Gamla Stan metro station. The streets were not empty. This was a Friday night in central Stockholm. Other pedestrians were nearby. At the corner of Sveavägen and Tunnelgatan, a man approached from behind. He fired a single shot from a Smith & Wesson revolver into Palme's back at close range. The bullet severed Palme's spinal cord and aorta. A second shot grazed Lisbeth Palme's back. The Prime Minister of Sweden collapsed on the sidewalk. He was pronounced dead at 1:06 a.m. at Sabbatsberg Hospital. The gunman ran up the steps of Tunnelgatan, a steep stairway leading away from the scene, and disappeared into the night. Several witnesses saw a man fleeing, but descriptions varied significantly. Height, clothing, even hair color conflicted across accounts. No weapon was recovered at the scene. The killer vanished into a Friday night in one of Europe's safest cities. What followed became one of the most heavily criticized investigations in modern European history. Police did not seal off the crime scene for hours. Crucial forensic evidence was contaminated or lost. Blood was washed from the sidewalk before proper analysis. The initial investigation pursued a theory that the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, was responsible. This line of inquiry consumed months and ultimately led nowhere. Over 10,000 people were interviewed. Tips poured in from around the world. More than 130 individuals confessed to the murder. All were eliminated. The investigation cycled through leadership. Hans Holmér, the initial lead investigator, was removed from the case in 1987 amid criticism of his tunnel vision on the PKK theory. New teams inherited mountains of disorganized evidence and conflicting witness statements. In December 1988, police arrested Christer Pettersson, a local man with a criminal history including a prior manslaughter conviction. Lisbeth Palme identified him in a lineup as the man she saw at the scene. In July 1989, Pettersson was convicted of murder by the Stockholm District Court. But in November 1989, the Svea Court of Appeal overturned the conviction. The appeals court found that the identification procedure was flawed. Lisbeth Palme had reportedly been shown a photograph of Pettersson before the lineup. No physical evidence linked Pettersson to the crime. No murder weapon was ever connected to him. He was acquitted and remained free until his death in 2004. The investigation explored an extraordinary range of theories. Investigators looked at South African intelligence services, given Palme's vocal opposition to apartheid. They examined possible connections to the Iran-Contra affair and international arms deals. A rogue faction within Swedish police was also considered. Some officers were known to harbor deep hostility toward Palme's politics. Each theory had circumstantial appeal. None had sufficient evidence to build a case. The sheer number of potential motives, domestic political enemies, foreign intelligence operations, lone actors, became the investigation's greatest obstacle. When everyone could be a suspect, no one was. In June 2020, 34 years after the murder, Chief Prosecutor Christer Pettersson announced that the investigation had identified a prime suspect. The suspect, referred to publicly as the Scandia Man, a graphic designer named Stig Engström, who had worked in an insurance company near the crime scene, had died by his own hand in the year 2000. Engström had been among the first people at the scene that night and had given inconsistent statements to police over the years. He had access to firearms and was known to harbor strong personal dislike for Palme's politics. According to prosecutors, circumstantial evidence pointed toward him. But here is what we must state clearly. No forensic evidence linked Engström to the murder. No weapon was ever found. No definitive witness identification was made. The case was closed, not because it was solved, but because the suspect was dead and could never be charged or tried. Many Swedes remain unconvinced. Polling and public commentary suggest deep skepticism that the true story has been told. The fundamental question persists. Was this the act of a lone individual or something far more coordinated? A brass plaque now marks the spot on Sveavägen where Olof Palme fell. Sweden changed after that night. The country's open political culture, where leaders walked freely among citizens, was shattered. Security protocols for government officials were overhauled permanently. The case consumed an estimated 500 million Swedish kroner and generated more than 250 volumes of investigative material. It remains, in every meaningful sense, unresolved, officially closed, emotionally open, the wound that never quite healed in the heart of Swedish democracy. Next time on Cold Case Files, we travel to Queensland, Australia, 1898. 3 siblings heading home from a dance were found murdered on a country road, and an entire community fell under suspicion. The Gatton murders, one of Australia's oldest and most disturbing cold cases. Subscribe. We investigate a new cold case multiple times a week.